Hello, welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. I'm an astrologer and homeopath and I live in the UK. And this week we're going to be going into more detail about the houses. So we've learnt about chart shapes. We've learned about all the different signs of the zodiac. We've learned how to make a chart. And now we're going to get into the confusing thing, as I mentioned in the last episode, about the house system. And I've explained that the easiest house system to learn is the one that I'm teaching you, which is equal house. And I'll just give you a little tip on how to get your chart to be equal house. So whiz over to astro.com, get your chart made up, go to the extended chart selection. So the way to find that, so let's just talk you through it. So we go to www.astro.com, click, page comes up. Make sure you've made your account up with them. It works much better if you already have an account you can sign into. So click top left hand of the page, it says free horoscopes. Scroll right across to the right hand side where it says drawings and calculations. Second one down, it says extended chart selection. So click on that. And the page that you'll be at now will say, hopefully on the left hand side in black, extended chart selection, and then underneath that it'll say birth data, and underneath that again it'll say horoscope 4, so make sure your name is in the box. Now scroll down a little bit further where it says methods. It should be written in red, circular charts, because that's what we want. There's millions of other different types of charts you can have, but it's circular charts we want. Underneath that it says chart type, natal chart wheel, which is what you want, chart drawing style, web default style. You don't need to mess around with that. Go down again. Now under options it says start date for charts marked with an asterisk. That's when we do transits later on, so leave that alone. Then it says house system. So under options now it says house system, and it'll say default. Now that default system will be Placidus, which is what we don't want. So click in the box, scroll down, and it'll say equal. So the first one, it says default, then it says Placidus, Koch, Companus, Regiomontanus, and then equal. So click on equal. Now all the other names of the house systems are with a capital letter because they're named after the flipping person that invented them. But equal house system, being the oldest house system, wasn't invented by anybody that they can trace it back to. So click on equal. Now click the blue button, click here to show your chart. Ping! And your chart will come up and it's all in equal houses. Now, if you look in the centre of the chart, you'll see written anti-clockwise, the numbers of each house, going from 1 to 12. Now, each one of those numbers is the house number. So when I'm talking about the first house, you need to make sure it's in the segment, you can call them pizza pieces if you want, that corresponds to that number. So just to make life easy, we're going to go to Astro Databank. So that's part of astro.com, but if you Google Astro Databank, we're going to use, and we've used her before, Queen Elizabeth II this time. Last week we were using Queen Elizabeth I, but we're going to use Queen Elizabeth II. So if you Google in the top right hand corner the box Queen Elizabeth of England, will come up. And if you scroll across to the right hand of the page, there'll be a picture of her chart and it'll say natal chart English style, because we're doing it the English way, equal house. Click on that and her chart comes up. And again, in the centre of the chart is numbered along the wheel from 1 until 12. So number 1 is the first house. Now we'll be here forever if I give you the interpretation for each planet being in each house, and most computer programs give you that anyway. That's a bit standard. But what we are going to do over the next few weeks or the next episodes is where the sun is located, and then the next episode will be where the moon's located. So good old Queenie Elizabeth, she has her sun is in the sign of Taurus, and it's located in the 4th house. And the 4th house in astrology is the house of the home and the roots. So this is where you come from. This is where you're brought up. This is your beginnings. And whatever planets you've got in there relate to your childhood. So the Queen's got her sun located there, which would indicate that she likes the fact that she's got a lineage, which she would do. She's a queen, and it's the fourth house in astrology, so it's the house of home and roots. Then she quite likes being at home. And come to think of it, she's not really the sort of queen that's jetting off everywhere every 30 seconds. I mean, she does obviously go around the world and visit various people and go to conferences and all the other stuff. But I think actually she's just recently given a lot of her duties away to the rest of the family, and she does like her home. If you remember, she has corgi dogs. I don't know how many she's got left, but she's quite sort of home orientated in that. The home for her is important. I mean home as literally home as in mummy and daddy, but also the house, the thing that goes over your head. So I'm just going to whiz round her chart and give you the chart, the house meanings for each house. So the first house, which our Queen has her Mars located in, the first house is to do with the head physically and the self. So this is the I am. Now, with our volunteers that we have for this week, we have, let me get her chart up, so I've got millions of pages open. We've got Joe. I think that's right, is it Joe? Let me get your chart up, Joe. Joe has her sun, so her sun sign is Sagittarius, and she's got her sun located in the first house. So if you imagine the first house is like the Nike logo, which is just do it. If someone has that, and my father had the same thing, if you have your sun, so the sun is the sign of the zodiac you are, so the symbol for it is the circle with the dot in the center. Sun in the first house is just do it. So you don't negotiate. Whatever planets you've got in your first house, they just need to be. You need to just allow them to happen. They're not so easily controllable. So sun in the first house is just do it. Don't bother with negotiation. You ain't going to enjoy that. Just do it. Well, maybe possibly if you're a Libra. So, and also if you imagine that each of the houses is a little bit like, but not exactly the same as each sign of the zodiac. So you could imagine that the first house is rather like the sign Aries, and Aries is, again, you know, just do it, let's go out there and do the stuff, and I'm going to lead and you're going to have to follow, those types of things. So you can imagine the first house, each house as being similar to, but not the same as, each sign of the zodiac. That will help you remember the houses. Yeah. So if you remember each sign of the zodiac and you remember the houses as being similar, that will be good. Now, each house also governs various different parts of the body. So the first house governs the spinal cord, the sensory nerves, the face, and the lower jaw. So in most astrology books, if you were to imagine someone's body and their head was in the first house, and then you did them in a nice yoga pose, so this is all the way around, you could correspond the various different parts of the body to each house as well. Now that's stretching astrology slightly. It does work in some cases, but again, your house system's not going to work if you don't have an accurate time of birth, which is why we're using the Queen's chart, because as I mentioned in the last episode, each member of the royal family, they are absolutely, they're totally accurate about their people's times of birth, because they're written down and recorded. Unlike your average person born in the UK, their birth time isn't recorded on their birth certificate. It's probably recorded in the hospital, and mum and dad might have written it down somewhere. But in the UK, your time of birth is not so easy to determine unless you remember the royal family. So first house is the self. The second house is the things that you own. So this governs your finances to some respects. There are two financial houses in the chart, the second house and the eighth house. The second house is the money that you own, and the eighth house is other people's money. So the second house is things that you value. Now, a lot of astrologers reinterpret that whether or not you value yourself, but it actually is more to do with your own finances. Now, the Queen has in her second house, she's got Jupiter. Don't think she worries too much about money, really. So Jupiter is a nice placement to have in the second house, because second house is to do with money, and if you've got your Jupiter there, and Jupiter's a fab planet, it means that you should, if you trust yourself, you should be able to trust luck. Yeah, so that you can be lucky financially. Now, of our three helpful volunteers today, Kay and Joe have both got Jupiter in the second house. Now, Kay, I don't know if you're going to agree with me on that one, that money will follow you, because you've also got Pluto in your second house, and Pluto's the planet of deep change and transformation. It's the ruling planet to Scorpio, so you might find it a little more difficult than the average person to benefit financially. But I would, if I were you, focus on your Jupiter there. So ignore your Pluto, work on the Jupiter, which means that money will come to you provided you allow it to. Yeah, so don't mentally prevent it. And I say the Queen, she's got Venus in the second house, and the second house is a little bit like the sign Taurus, of which the Queen is, and Venus is the ruling planet to Taurus, so she's got what we call a planet in its natural home. Yeah. And in fact, Mars in the first house, because Mars is the planet that rules Aries, to have Mars in your first house, that again is its natural home. So Mars in the first natural home, Venus in the second natural home. Jupiter is naturally at home in the ninth, because it rules Sagittarius. And if I go into these things too much, you're going to get a headache, but we can come back to those things later on. So the second house is your dosh, it's your money, it's your attitude towards money. So in the Queen's case, she's got two planets there in two different signs, because she's got Jupiter in Aquarius, so money is comme ci comme ça, and Venus is in Pisces. So you might find that she's a little bit more sensitive to the things that she owns and her attitude towards money. Okay, so second house. Parts of the body is the liver, the gallbladder, the neck, the throat, and the cerebellum. There we go. So third house. Now the third house, I like the third house. Third house is my favourite one of mine. Third house is short journeys and siblings. So this is your brothers and sisters. So if you have brothers and sisters, this is your attitude towards them. Now in my case, I've got Neptune in my third house, and I've got bazillions, well I did have, because I've lost two of them now, but I did have a lot of siblings, and Neptune is the psychic planet, and I had I'd say quite a psychic connection with one of my siblings, which is my younger sister Katie, who had Down syndrome and died recently, and it was all very sad. She got dementia. But the third house is short journeys, siblings, and your mentality, so it's how you think. So whatever you've got in your third house will correspond to your thinking process. And our lovely Queenie there, she's got her Mercury. So again, that's a natural, isn't she lovely? She's got all these natural homes. So Mercury's naturally at home in the third house, because the third house is similar to the third sign of the zodiac, which is Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So again, in its natural home. And Uranus, not quite such a happy placement for Uranus to be. Uranus is the planet of sudden happenings, and having it in your third house of communication and how you think in your short journeys and your siblings and stuff could be a bit more complex. Plus, the Queen has her sun sign in Taurus, but her Mercury in Aries, so she can be a little bit blunt, which we know she is. It's not, Mercury in Aries isn't a diplomatic sign, so I think she might sort of struggle a little with that. So in our lovely volunteers, third house, K, you've got your moon there, so the moon's your emotional self, so you might be emotional about your siblings. Interesting. Joe, your third house is empty, doesn't matter, we'll have empty houses. And Galina, have I spelt your name right? Galina, yes. Third house again is empty, and in your second house you've got Mars and Neptune, so your attitude towards finances is, Neptune's not a good planet really to have in your second house, so you might find it a little bit more difficult to have a realistic attitude towards money, so maybe you should be intuiting it more. So third house is short distances, so little journeys that you make, your siblings, your brothers and sisters, and your mental attitude. And the parts of the body that it governs is the lungs, the glands, the bronchial tubes, it's the shoulders and the hands. So 4th house. So this is where the Queen has her sun sign. So wherever your sun is located in your chart is where you operate from. It's where you feel most at home. So the Queen having her sun in the 4th house means she feels at home in her home, like at the physical place where she lives. So it's always good to find out where your sun's located and read up on the analysis of the house that your sun is in. So 4th house is the home, the roots, the family, the inheritance, not so much inheritance, that's the wrong word, your family history, thank you, family history. And the parts of the body that it governs is the breast, the stomach and the spleen. And if you think of the 4th house like the sign Cancer, Cancer is all about the family and the home and cooking nice yummy meals and things. Now the 5th house is next. K, you've got a absolutely chock-a-block 4th house. You've got Mars, Neptune and Mercury in your 4th house. So you do need to do some family research and you need to stay in contact with your parents. But Mars there's a lot of anger associated possibly with your upbringing. Neptune in there, so you probably wanted to spend the majority of your childhood asleep or dreaming. And Mercury there, you want to feel heard. Interesting. Let's have our other chart examples. Nothing. Galena's is empty. And I'm trying to have 6 windows open. And Joe, because you've got such a cluster chart, you've only got planets in 6 houses. So your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 9th all empty. So we'll come back to you and yours in a tick. 5th house. 5th house is about creativity, romance and babies. You're more likely to be fertile and have the ability to have children if you've got your sun in the 5th house, depending on what else might be aspected there as well. Now the Queen, as we know, has got a number of children. Her 5th house is empty, doesn't matter. It's in the sign of Taurus, which is a fertile sign, and as we know, she had kiddies. I mean, there might be some other asteroids or something that'll be in her 5th house, and I haven't calculated the dates of the kiddies' births and seen if they're in the same signs as her 5th house. That's one thing you do. But it's the 5th house is about your ability to create. So you could be creating children, or you could be creating art, or you could be creating music. My sister Lucy has her sun in the 5th house, and she's a performance poet and a slam poet and a novelist, and had 3 children. And has 3 children, beg your pardon, gave birth to 3 kiddies. And her 5th house has her sun located in there, so she's happiest when she's creating. Now K, this is where your sun is located, so you are much, much happier when you're creating. And I know you have all your doggies as well, so that would be in keeping with the 5th house, because that's a necessity to be nurturing, and not that you gave birth to your doggies, but to be sort of similar to having them. You've also got Saturn located there, which is quite a severe planet, and your Saturn's very near to your sun sign, so you're unfortunately very self-critical, so you're going to have to stop that. And you've got your Venus located there, so actually your 5th house is very, very fertile, so there is the possibility there that you might have been able to have had children. There's nothing to say that you couldn't, so it would be more circumstantial rather than biological. Galena, let me just check what's in your 5th. Empty, and we already know that Josie's empty too. So, and as the Queen has nothing in hers. And the 5th house, the parts of the body is the heart. That's the heart is governed by the 5th house. And if you imagine the 5th house is like the sign Leo, so Leo's quite an active, creative, get out there and do it sign of the zodiac. And I often sort of think if your sun is located in the 5th house, it isn't a good idea to ignore a person with sun in the 5th house. They do like to shine in their own way, depending on what sign it is and the ascendant as well. But the 5th house wants to shine at something, because if you imagine that the 5th house is where you need to shine. Yeah. So onto the 6th house. So the 6th house is about health and work, gosh, why does astrology put those two things together? Don't ask me, I didn't invent astrology. But it's health and work. So it's your attitude towards those two things. So work is the actual work, the job, the physical stuff you do every day. Now the Queen has her Pluto located there in the sign of Cancer. So her work involves the family, because Cancer is the sign of the family and Pluto is about deep change and transformation. So I think her reign, because she does take her job very seriously, but I'd say her reign as Queen Elizabeth II has been very different to previous members of the royal family. Other than Queen Victoria, I think she's trumped the Queen as being in the job longer. And Pluto located there in her case, deep change and transformation. And Galena, you have your Saturn located in your 6th house, so you do take your work, whatever it is you do, very seriously. But because it's Saturn, you might also feel very responsible for your work and what happens with it. So we've done the houses 1 to 6 in this episode. In the next episode, we're going to be covering 7 to 12. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about the houses. And just to finish, the 6th house is health, so you need to look at that if you have any health issues. And it covers the bowels and the solar plexus are the parts of the body. And I also think of the 6th house as your energy. So where does your energy come from? If your 6th house is empty, you need to think of something to fill it up with. I've got Mars and Venus in my 6th house. I don't ever feel like I don't have any energy. Sometimes I feel a little tired, but I've got 2 rather active planets in my 6th house, so I've got absolute oodles of energy. And there's different speeds, so different signs are going to go at different speeds. The Queen, her 6th house is in the sign of Cancer, which is very much a slower sign. So health-wise, and having Pluto there, she might eventually die of something that's sort of, I don't know, degenerative or something. And not that the 6th house is even going to indicate how you die, but the health issues that she might have would be something that wouldn't be visible and is quite sort of hidden, and then eventually is discovered and blah blah blah. That might bring a big change for her. Maybe she'll get some health issue at some point, and that will make her very sympathetic to other people who have a similar health issue. But the 6th is all to do with health, yeah? And if your sun sign's located, gosh, I've got so many clients with sun in the 6th, you are going to be health obsessed. So you need to watch out for that. If your sun is in the 6th house, be careful about being obsessed with your health. By all means, live a healthy existence, but don't go bonkers at it. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and the next episode we'll be doing the houses 7 to 12. So do have a fab week. My name's Mary English. You can find me at maryenglish.com. You can find my astrology books on Amazon. I think if you just go to Amazon and Google Mary English Astrologer, some of them should turn up. And I also teach astrology. It's over 6 weeks, 6 lessons, and it's via Skype. And by email, you get a Word document, you have a YouTube video you watch, and then you have a half an hour to an hour appointment on Skype with me to chat through any questions you might have about the lessons. So I hope you've enjoyed this week, and we'll speak next week. Bye bye now.